What happens when a Hollywood star known for her calm composure finally decides she's had enough, live unfiltered, in front of millions? That's exactly what unfolded the moment Florence Pugh stepped onto the set of The View. And what happened next left the studio frozen, the host speechless, and the audience unsure whether to gasp, cheer, or hold their breath. It started with an energy that didn't quite fit Florence. She walked onto the stage with a soft smile that flickered like a candle in the wind, present, but fragile. The crowd erupted with applause, but Florence didn't soak it in the way celebrities usually do. She didn't wave. She didn't beam. She just nodded, almost as if she was bracing herself for something she already sensed was coming. And she wasn't wrong. Sunny Hostin leaned forward even before Florence took her seat, her expression sharp, analytical, ready to dissect. There was a tone in the air, an undercurrent, that suggested this wasn't going to be a simple promotional interview about a movie or a project. Florence felt it. You could see it in the way her shoulders tightened, her breath grew small, and her fingers curled around the arm of her chair. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed her warmly, but even that warmth couldn't erase the tension Sunny was holding onto like a blade. The studio lights were bright, brighter than usual, and Florence blinked up at them, adjusting, trying to ground herself. But it was Sunny's voice that snapped the moment into motion. "So, Florence," Sunny began, leaning forward like she was about to interrogate a witness instead of chat with a guest. "I want to talk about something that's been bothering a lot of people lately." The audience shifted. Even Joy Behar arched an eyebrow. Florence turned her head slowly. "Okay, what is it?" Sunny didn't hesitate. "Your comments about criticism not affecting you. You've said it doesn't matter what people think, that you don't read negative feedback. Some people feel that's dismissive, especially considering the public discusses you as if you're part of their lives." Florence blinked, a soft inhale pulling her shoulders up for just a second. Her voice stayed gentle, but there was confusion in her eyes. "I don't think it's dismissive. I just believe people shouldn't live for other people's approval." Sunny didn't smile. "But when you're in the public eye, isn't that part of the job? Isn't it a little disrespectful to ignore the people who make your career possible?" A soft, shocked murmur rolled through the studio. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Joy shifted uncomfortably. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to interrupt but didn't dare. The cameras zoomed in on Florence, her jaw tightening, her breath catching, her fingers tapping the armrest like she was holding back a reaction she didn't want to reveal. Florence swallowed. "I appreciate fans. I'm grateful for them. But I don't think I owe my self-worth to strangers' opinions. That's not disrespect. That's boundaries." Sunny tilted her chin upward, like she was waiting for that answer, like she knew it was coming and didn't like it. Boundaries are one thing. Acting like the public's thoughts don't matter at all, that's something else. The crowd reacted, some gasping, some even booing, but mostly people just looked stunned. This wasn't the tone they expected. This wasn't a debate. It felt like an accusation. Florence's expression changed. It didn't explode. It didn't snap. It shifted slowly, controlled, deliberate. Her eyes darkened just slightly, not with anger but with something deeper, something personal. "Sunny," Florence said quietly, "I didn't come here to be talked down to." The studio froze. Sunny's eyebrows lifted, then lowered. "I'm not talking down to you. I'm asking questions." Florence shook her head just once. Questions don't usually sound like judgments. Whoopi leaned in immediately. "All right, ladies, let's breathe here." Her voice had that familiar, patient firmness. "We're having a conversation, not a confrontation." But Florence wasn't looking at Whoopi. Her eyes stayed locked on Sunny, who remained unflinching. Florence added, "I respect this show. I respect conversations. But I don't appreciate being treated like I did something wrong by having boundaries." The audience erupted with applause, loud, unexpected, almost cinematic. You could feel Florence's breath loosen at the sound of support, but Sunny didn't move an inch. Joy broke the tension with a nervous laugh. Well, this got serious quickly. But Sunny didn't let the moment soften. "I'm just saying what people are already saying online. You're a public figure, and public figures should be open to public opinion." Florence raised her eyebrows. "I am open to discussion. I'm not open to disrespect." That line hit the room like a bolt. Even the cameraman seemed to shift, trying to catch every angle of Florence's controlled fire. Sunny leaned back, crossing her arms, her expression unreadable but tense. Whoopi interjected again, calmer this time. "Florence, what do you feel is being disrespected right now?" Florence's voice softened, but her eyes didn't. My intention. My humanity. A hush swept across the audience. Florence continued. People assume because actors are public, we don't feel things. But we do. I choose not to engage in negativity because I value my mental health. That's not disrespect. That's self-preservation. Sunny finally responded. But when fans express concern. Concern. Florence cut in gently but firmly. Or entitlement. The air thickened with electricity. You could feel the tension from the back row to the front. It was no longer about criticism or boundaries. It was about dignity, about Florence reclaiming space she felt was being taken from her. Sunny's lips parted, but she didn't have a comeback ready, at least not immediately. Florence leaned forward slightly, her hands finally unclenching. You can ask me anything, Sunny. But don't imply I don't care about people. I do. I care deeply. I just won't let strangers define me. For the first time, Sunny blinked, taken aback not by anger, but by clarity. The audience clapped again, louder this time, some even standing. Florence sat back, steady, composed. But beneath that composure was something shaking, something vulnerable, raw, and undeniably real. And Sunny, for the first time, looked unsure, like the conversation had slipped into a place she hadn't predicted. But this moment, this wasn't the peak. This was only the beginning. The energy in the studio shifted the moment Florence leaned back in her chair. You could almost hear the air vibrating, a low hum of anticipation, the kind that settles across a room right before lightning strikes. Everyone on set felt it. The hosts, the audience, even Florence herself, who inhaled slowly, as if steadying her heartbeat before the next wave came crashing in. But it was Sunny who broke the silence. Her voice was cool, but her eyes were sharp, locked onto Florence with a kind of precision that could cut glass. If that's how you feel, she said calmly, then let's talk about authenticity. Because I think that's what people are questioning. Joy's head snapped toward her. Whoopi's body straightened. Sawa's face softened into something like concern. It was clear Sunny wasn't backing down. She was doubling down. Florence crossed one leg over the other, trying to maintain her composure. But there was a tremor in her jaw, a subtle tightening, a signal that her patience was wearing thin. What exactly are you suggesting, Sunny? People love you, Sunny replied. They follow you because they feel connected to you. They cheer for you. They defend you. And when you say criticism doesn't affect you, it makes some people feel like their voices don't matter. Like you're above them. Florence stared at her for a long moment, long enough that the audience felt the tension coil around them like a rope. Then Florence spoke. Quietly. Deliberately. I never said I was above anyone. Ever. Sunny lifted one eyebrow. But that's the message some people are taking from your interviews. Florence's throat tightened. That's their interpretation, not my intention. Whoopi held up a hand. Intentions matter. But so does tone. And right now, both of you sound like you're talking past each other. But neither woman seemed ready to release the moment. Florence leaned forward just slightly, her voice trembling, not with anger, but with an unspoken weight. Sunny, do you know what it's like to open your phone and see thousands of strangers telling you who you are? What you should look like? How you should behave? What you should apologize for? Do you know what that does to a person? Sunny didn't flinch. I'm on TV every day. Yes, I know exactly what that feels like. And you still think I owe it to people to read things that hurt me? The question hung suspended, fragile but sharp, like a piece of broken glass catching the light. Sunny hesitated for the first time, just for a breath. I think, she said slowly, that when people criticize you, they are often expressing something deeper, something honest, something they want you to hear. And what about my honesty? Florence shot back gently. What about my boundaries? What about the fact that I'm a human being who gets overwhelmed? Why is it acceptable for the world to unload on me, but unacceptable for me to step back and protect myself? A few audience members applauded softly, unsure if they were supporting Florence or simply reacting to the emotional charge suddenly filling the room. Sarah leaned in, voice quiet but warm. I don't think anyone wants you overwhelmed, Florence. I think people are curious. They see someone as confident as you, and they wonder how you manage it. Florence nodded appreciatively at Sarah, her shoulders easing for the first time in minutes. Confidence isn't the absence of struggle. It's making choices that stop you from falling apart. That line, delivered with raw vulnerability, sent a ripple through the audience. A deep, collective exhale. People shifted, nodded, absorbed. But Sunny still wasn't satisfied. She steepled her fingers under her chin, studying Florence with unblinking intensity. Let me ask you something directly. If negative comments don't affect you, then why are we here right now, having this emotional reaction? Florence froze. The audience gasped. Joy slapped her hand on the table. Sunny. Whoopi's voice thundered. Okay, now hold on. But Florence held up a hand. No. Let her ask it. The room fell silent again, not tense this time, but heavy, like a storm cloud finally ready to break. Florence looked at Sunny with an expression that wasn't angry, wasn't defensive, it was wounded. Deeply, honestly wounded. I didn't say criticism never affects me, she said quietly. I said I choose not to let it control me. There's a difference. Sunny swallowed. A tiny movement, but significant. Florence continued, her voice trembling with sincerity. This isn't about comments. It's about the assumption that actors owe their emotional well-being to strangers. That because we're public, we're supposed to withstand anything. That we deserve everything said to us. And that's what feels disrespectful. A hush fell over the audience, so complete you could hear someone shifting in the back row. Florence's eyes glossed, not with tears, but with intensity, like she was speaking a truth she'd carried for too long. I'm not here to prove I'm strong. I'm here to explain that I bleed like anyone else. And I refuse to apologize for protecting my peace. The audience erupted, not in cheers, but in a deep, emotional applause that seemed to shake the studio. People stood. People nodded. People felt it. But Sunny wasn't standing. She wasn't clapping. She wasn't smiling. Instead, she leaned forward again, slowly, deliberately, and asked, Then why do you post so much personal content online if you don't want the public in your life? That question hit Florence like a punch. You could see it, the way her breath stumbled, the way her shoulders pulled back as if bracing for impact, the way her fingers curled into her palms. Whoopi stepped in fast. Sunny, come on. But Florence spoke before she could finish. Because, she said, voice sharp with emotion, I want to share joy, not pain. I want to share creativity, not criticism. Just because I give pieces of my life doesn't mean the world gets to take the whole thing. Another applause wave surged across the room. Bigger this time, louder, more visceral. Sunny opened her mouth to respond, but for the first time, hesitation found her. Florence wasn't just defending herself. She was speaking from a place that resonated far beyond celebrity. It was about humanity, privacy, dignity. Joy leaned back, shaking her head. I feel like I'm watching a therapy session with cameras. Sarah let out a nervous laugh. A very intense one. Whoopi sighed, long and deep. Ladies, we need a reset. But Florence wasn't ready to reset. She slowly turned toward Sunny, her voice softening, but her gaze unwavering. I came here expecting a conversation. I didn't expect to be judged for taking care of myself. Sunny stared back, caught between her role and the realization that maybe, just maybe, she had crossed an invisible line. And the audience, sensing they were witnessing something raw, something real, leaned in closer, because the confrontation was far from over. This was the moment before the fire ignites, and the sparks were already hitting the ground. The tension had reached a point where even the air felt charged, as if the entire studio were holding its breath waiting for the next spark to flare. Florence didn't look away from Sunny, and Sunny didn't break her gaze either. Two women, two worlds, two perspectives colliding under the brightest lights daytime television could offer. But beneath the clash, something more complicated was unfolding, something neither one of them could fully name yet. A stage manager off-camera made a subtle gesture, as if urging the hosts to move to a lighter topic, but no one on set even glanced in that direction. The energy was too intense, too thick, too riveting to interrupt. And Florence, she wasn't done. Not even close. Sunny, she said with a steadiness that surprised even her, you asked why I share parts of my life online. And I answered honestly. But I need to ask you something now. Sunny didn't blink. Go ahead. Florence leaned forward, her voice soft but simmering with something powerful. Have you ever considered that public figures post because they want to feel human? Not perfect. Not invincible. Just connected. The studio quieted again, the audience leaning in so far it looked like they might spill onto the set. And have you, Florence continued, ever realized how lonely it can be when millions of people think they know you, but no one actually does? Sunny's jaw shifted, not defiance this time, but something more vulnerable. Something human. I think a lot of people feel lonely, she said quietly. Not just celebrities. Florence nodded. Exactly. Which is why it's so important to allow people, no matter who they are, the space to protect their hearts. Joy exhaled loudly. Finally, something I can agree with. Protecting your peace is a full-time job. Sarah laughed under her breath, nervous but relieved. Whoopi placed a hand on her chest as if saying thank you to whoever was responsible for toning things down. But just as the tension seemed to soften, Sunny shifted again. A small movement. A subtle reset. As if she wasn't ready to let the moment settle into comfort. As if she felt the need to follow the thread all the way to its end. You talk a lot about boundaries, Sunny said, voice calm but pointed. And I respect that. Truly. But I also think that when someone becomes a public figure, the contract changes. People feel like they invest in you. They feel like they know you. And when you pull away, they feel rejected. Florence inhaled slowly, letting the words land before responding. I know people invest in me. I know they care. But caring doesn't mean ownership. That's where the line has to be drawn. The audience murmured, the kind of soft agreement that comes not from drama, but from truth. Florence continued, I'm not rejecting anyone. I'm just refusing to be consumed. Sunny nodded slightly, absorbing the weight of those words. I hear you. I really do. But you have to understand how your message sounds. Florence hesitated. For the first time in the entire conversation, something in her expression shifted. Not frustration, not defensiveness, but reflection. She spoke gently. Then help me understand. Because right now, it feels like there's a misunderstanding that's spiraling into something harsher than it needs to be. Sunny softened, barely, but noticeably. She leaned her elbows on the table, breaking the rigid posture she'd held all morning. I think people look at you and see strength. They see someone who doesn't break. Someone who doesn't flinch. And when you say criticism doesn't affect you, it feeds into this idea that you're untouchable. And that makes some people feel like you exist on a different plane from everyone else. Florence's eyes widened slightly. For a moment, the room felt like it had finally reached a crack where empathy could slip in. I'm not untouchable, she said softly. I never have been. I just don't show every wound. Joy leaned forward. Honey, nobody wants to see every wound. That's what diaries are for. A burst of laughter erupted. Real laughter, grateful laughter, the kind that finally breaks tension. Even Florence cracked a small smile. But Sunny kept her focus steady. You don't show your wounds. And that's okay. But when you act like nothing gets through to you, it confuses people. Florence nodded slowly, digesting that. Maybe I haven't always communicated that clearly. But I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm trying to navigate my career without losing myself in it. Isn't that something most people can relate to? The audience erupted again, applause filling the studio with a renewed warmth. Sarah spoke up quietly. I think that's something everyone can understand. Trying to stay whole in a world that wants pieces of you. Florence's voice trembled. Exactly. For the first time, the silence that followed felt gentle, not charged. Sunny took a breath. A deep one. The kind that signals a shift inside someone. Not a retreat, but a re-evaluation. Florence, she said. I didn't mean to make you feel attacked. I was trying to bring up a perspective I hear from a lot of people. Florence nodded. And I appreciate that. But the way it came across, it felt personal. That wasn't my intention, Sunny replied. Whoopi clapped her hands together. Good. Because we're gonna need everyone breathing before we hit the next commercial. Laughter again. Softer this time. More grounded. But the cameras kept rolling, and the tension, though eased, still hovered, waiting to see where this unexpected emotional journey would lead. Florence looked down at her hands. I don't want to fight with you, Sunny. Sunny's expression flickered. Surprise, humility, maybe even relief. I don't want to fight with you either. Florence looked up again, her eyes shimmering. Not with tears, Florence didn't cry easily, but with emotion she couldn't hide. I just want to be understood. For once. The words cracked the room wide open. The audience reacted instantly, a mix of applause, sympathetic murmurs, emotional tension. Sunny exhaled, her shoulders dropping. Then let's understand each other. But the audience didn't know, Florence didn't know, Sunny didn't know, that one more spark, one final catalyst, was about to ignite the biggest moment of the entire showdown. The studio was calm. Too calm. And that's when everything shifted. The calm felt unnatural, like the moment in a movie when you know the silence isn't peace. It's the inhale before the scream. Florence sat with her hands folded, breathing slowly, her shoulders lowering as if she finally believed the storm had passed. Sunny had softened, the edges of her voice no longer sharp. The audience had relaxed too, their bodies settling into the seats as though they were adjusting back into daytime television instead of emotional warfare. But storms don't always announce themselves. Sometimes, they just crack open the sky without warning. It began with a question, one that wasn't even meant to provoke. A simple card that Joy had been holding since the start of the interview. A question she had intended to ask 20 minutes earlier before everything spiraled. "So," Joy said brightly, trying to steer the energy into safer waters. "Florence, you've been pretty vocal about body positivity and ignoring beauty standards. How do you keep that confidence when people constantly comment on how you look?" Florence froze. Sunny looked up sharply. Sarah pressed her lips together. Whoopi whispered, "Oh, boy." The audience murmured. Everyone knew this was sensitive territory. Florence had faced brutal scrutiny about her body for years. And the moment the question hung in the air, suspended like a fragile ornament ready to shatter, something inside Florence snapped, not in anger, but in a truth too raw to compress back into silence. "It's exhausting," she said quietly. The studio hushed instantly. Florence's voice was steady, but her eyes carried years of held-in hurt. "People think confidence comes naturally to me. That I wake up every day loving everything about myself. I don't. I've struggled. I've cried. I've questioned myself more times than I can count." Sunny leaned forward slowly, listening now, not challenging, not ready to interrupt, but listening. Florence continued, breath trembling. "And when I say I don't read negative comments, it's not because I think I'm above anyone. It's because I can't. If I read what people say, what strangers say, about my body, I wouldn't survive it." A gasp rippled across the audience. You could feel the weight of her words settling into people's chests. Florence pressed her fingers together, grounding herself. "I protect myself not because I don't care, but because I care too much." Sunny's face shifted, something in her armor cracking, something human rising through the layers. "Florence," she began softly. But Florence wasn't finished. "For years, people have tried to shrink me, physically, emotionally, mentally. And I refuse. I refuse to make myself small for anyone. That's why I have boundaries. That's why I don't engage with negativity. Not because I'm untouchable, but because I'm breakable." The audience erupted, clapping, cheering, some even shouting her name. The applause wasn't polite, it was visceral, emotional, protective. Like the room collectively realized they had misunderstood her strength. Sunny looked down at the table, as if reconsidering every earlier word she'd fired like a dart. When she finally raised her head, her eyes held an expression no one expected. "Florence," she said, her voice low and sincere, "I didn't know that's what you were carrying." Florence nodded. "Because no one asks." Sunny swallowed, her throat tightening. "I should have asked." And just like that, the tension that had wrapped itself around the studio all morning loosened. A visible shift. A human one. But the universe wasn't done delivering its final twist. A voice from the audience, loud, emotional, broke through the quiet. "We love you, Florence." Florence turned toward the crowd, a soft, startled smile breaking through the heaviness on her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice cracking. Another voice chimed in. "You don't owe anyone your pain." The audience exploded into applause again, people rising from their seats, clapping, cheering, a wave of humanity pushing warmth across the set. Florence blinked rapidly, looking overwhelmed but grateful beyond words. Whoopi stood up, a rare gesture, her presence commanding. "Okay," she said, smiling gently. "I think we all learned something today. Boundaries aren't disrespect. Silence isn't arrogance. And sometimes the strongest people are the ones who protect themselves the hardest." Sunny took a breath, then did something no one expected. She reached out and placed her hand over Florence's. A small gesture, but powerful. Vulnerable. Real. "I'm sorry if I came across harsher than I intended," Sunny said. "That wasn't fair to you." Florence looked at her, really looked, and nodded with a softness that felt like forgiveness. "Thank you." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't staged. It was human. But when a producer signaled that they were wrapping the segment, the real shockwaves were just beginning. Because moments after the show ended, clips of the confrontation were already hitting social media. And within minutes, Florence's name was trending worldwide. People posted side-by-side videos of Sunny's sharp questions and Florence's emotional rebuttals. Others debated whether the show had gone too far, whether Florence had been unfairly cornered, or whether the conversation was necessary. Some called it the most raw moment The View has had in years. Others called it a masterclass in emotional honesty. And fans, thousands of them, flooded the internet with support, posting messages like, "Florence Pugh owes no one her emotional labor. Boundaries are not disrespect. She handled that with more grace than anyone I've seen." Even celebrities chimed in, praising her composure, her vulnerability, her strength. Meanwhile, Sunny released a brief statement after the show, acknowledging that the conversation hit deeper than expected, and that she respected Florence for speaking so openly. But the clip, Florence saying "I refuse to make myself small for anyone," became the centerpiece of the entire discourse. It was shared, reposted, dissected, and celebrated across platforms. Overnight, it became more than a confrontation. It became a movement. Florence, for her part, said nothing publicly. Not immediately. Not the next day. Not even after the clip hit 20 million views. She let the moment breathe. She let the world talk while she stayed quiet, protected, grounded, exactly as she'd said she needed to be. And maybe that was the most powerful statement of all. Because sometimes silence isn't avoidance. Sometimes, silence is healing. And now that you've seen this emotional storm unfold right in front of you, I want to know what you think. Did Sunny push too far? Did Florence handle it with the grace people praised her for? Or do you see the entire moment differently? Let your voice be heard. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Talk Narrative for more explosive celebrity showdowns, dramatic talk show moments, and stories that pull you straight into the heart of the tension. Your support means everything, and there's so much more coming. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and stay with Talk Narrative.